evening, and just as a reminder, this program is being recorded. We ask that you please mute yourselves, and after a few moments of quiet, we will begin.
Okay.
Welcome to Tech Talks, hosted by Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey. Tonight we have with us Dean Martineau, who will be sharing about the latest iOS 26 accessibility updates, which have been released this month. Before I introduce our guest, I would like to share with you his bio. Mr. Martineau has been teaching adaptive technology to people who are blind since the days of the Apple IIe and the Braille and Speak. Dean has created recorded tutorials, a computer magazine, and has written the Windows Keyboard Power User Guide and Get Cracking with Chrome for Windows, to name a few of his books. Since 1999, he has been part of a team offering systems training to Social Security employees. In 2004, Dean created the publication Top Tech Tidbits for Thursday and has produced over 800 issues. Currently, Dean provides training in JSA, Windows, and iOS to individuals directly and through vocational rehabilitation agencies. Before we move into this evening's presentation, let's review our Zoom protocol for this evening. We ask that you hold your questions until Dean cues you. When you ask your question, we ask that you raise your hand. For those of you who have dialed in, the raise your hand feature is *9. *6 will mute and unmute you, giving you the opportunity to ask your question. Using Alt-Y to raise your hand, Alt-A is the mute and unmute command. If you're using a Mac, use the Option plus Y, the keyboard shortcut, to raise or lower your hand. Alt plus A to mute and unmute yourself. Using the Zoom app on the iPad, move to the top right, select the More option, and flick down to the Raise Hand. On the iPhone, this feature is located at the bottom of the screen on the right side. And now, we welcome to tonight's Tech Talks, Dean Martineau.
Well, thank you very much, Vicki, and I'm happy to be here. And I'm here at a distance. I think I'm not. Jonathan Mosen used to have the distinction for when he would speak from New Zealand, and I'm not going to ever exceed that. But right now, and I think for the foreseeable future, I'm living in Bolivia. So I'm talking to you from Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Bolivia. Today is Santa Cruz Day, the big day when they celebrate the founding of the city. And so anyway, that's where I am. And but you know, the world's one internet is just binds us together, and here we are. So I want to talk about what's all new, what all's going on with iOS 26. Of course, we know that they skipped ahead and decided to start using year numbers for these things rather than having a mishmash of versions that didn't make any sense. So now we have iOS 26, iPod OS 26, and various other programs. We're going to stick mostly to the iOS update this time. And what I decided to do is to talk about those things that I think are going to be of most interest to all of us. And it's going to be kind of an overview because there's simply so much to talk about. So I'm going to talk about a lot of things, give some information about a lot of things, and then we'll see how we're guided in the questions. Because after all, it's those of you that are here that are going to want to know things that we'll talk about how you can learn more about something or how you can figure something out. Now, there have been every year when around June, Apple announces, oh, we got a new operating system coming out in September. And then every year, we blind people, and probably a lot of others too, but we sort of hold our breath to see if something's going to be damaged when they come out with this. This year hasn't been perfect. And so I want to say, some people, not that many, but it's hard to predict who it's going to be, have lost speech when they upgraded to iOS 26. And Apple is aware of this and has promised a fix. And indeed, 26.1 is in beta already. So the fix is coming. So I would say if you are somebody who is a little bit trepidatious about these things and you haven't upgraded to iOS 26 yet, you might want to wait You probably wouldn't have any problem if you don't wait, but you might. It's hard to figure out who's going to have this problem and who doesn't have it. So I'd wait for 26.1 if you're concerned. If you're not concerned, go ahead and upgrade if you haven't done it already. You're probably going to be fine. And there are ways to recover from the loss of speech. You can, if you have the skills to do it, you can work with it, you can get around it. But a few people, I mean, nobody in the Apple Viz team, that's the big Apple website of users that is well respected in the world, for providing information to blind Apple users. Nobody there had the problem, but they do know that the problem existed and has existed and still occasionally does. So that's an initial little warning for you if you're in that situation. There is an awful lot of new material here that's going to affect you if you're going to use the new iOS 26. A lot of changes, big and small. One of the things is that you're going to find the layout of apps has changed significantly. So we're used to the last many years, increasingly when you go into, say, messages or mail or settings or any number of standardized apps, up in the upper left corner, there's a search field. You can search for whatever it is in that program does. You can use that search. There's a dictate button, which is really handy because you can just double tap, single finger double tap that as a voiceover user. I am going to be using voiceover terminology and voiceover parlance here pretty much all the time. You can dictate your search term. It comes up, it's put into the search box, and the results show up. Well, that's great. And that's still there, except it isn't in the upper left anymore. It's in the bottom right. All the search boxes have moved to the bottom right. The explanation one person gave, and it may be correct, is that this gives more screen real estate. So it leaves more room for what's really going on in the app, as opposed to tying it up with having the search box up in the top. So it's like now, if you're in email, used to be the compose button was in the bottom right. Well, now the compose button, when you want to compose a new message, is to the left of search. So that's going to be a change that we'll just sort of get used to.
Thank you so much.
It would be good probably if people we could mute, because some people find it distracting when we hear conversations on the app. It's so, and if the hosts have to, they'll mute you, but it's no big deal right now. But it tends to be better when people are muted. Okay, I'm going to take these things in no logical order, kind of what I wrote down. Um, Apple Apple has long been criticized for not allowing us to create our own ringtones. When you're in, Android, you can do this in your sleep, but in Apple, you couldn't. You had to buy them, um, or you had to go a fairly complicated process to install your own ringtones. Now you can, using the Files app or the Voice Memos app, you can, if you find a short file that's under 30 seconds in length, um, in files or voice memos, you can choose share, and then down there's going to be you're probably going to have to go into the more option, but eventually you can choose use as ringtone. And of course, that if you're using the Voice Memos app, you can trim these ringtones. So if you have a file that is a little long, you can use the trim feature of the Voice Memos app to shorten it. But we now have a little bit of freedom to use our own ringtones, something we haven't been able to do before. I don't know why it took Apple so long to do that. Something else that maybe is going to be an improvement in moving on to the Photos app. A lot of people found it frustrating. Apple keeps meddling with these things, and last year they made so the whole Photos app just had one tab. I found it personally very difficult to find my pictures. I'm not a big user of the Photos app, but there are times when I need it, and when I do, there's a specific picture I'm looking for, and it simply took me too long to find it. Well, that should be better now because they have reinstated tabs, and so there's a library tab, and you can search, and you can use those tabs to separate things out and find your pictures. So that should make using Photos app a little bit easier. Some changes have been made in both messages and phone. Messages being the least significant of them. The phone is kind of a revolutionary thing for those of us that have been using iPhones for a while. And again, and if like me, you haven't made use of the filter buttons in some of the apps, you're going to be encouraged to start thinking filter, because the filter capability is what's going to open up the ability to use and get organized in these different apps on the phone. So you can filter in messages, you can filter out messages that have unknown senders, you can filter out messages that can have you can organize deleted messages. So there's some changes there that you can use with the Messages app that may have some ability. I'm finding it easier to find the send button than I did last year. You know, I will dictate or occasionally write a message, and then next thing I know, I'm trying to find the send button, and I found that a little bit difficult in the previous version of iOS, and now it's really easy. So I don't know quite why that happened, but I'm glad it has, and I hope it continues that way. Okay, I'm having a little technical issue with my highly expensive Braille Sense 6 note taker. So my notes are all of a sudden disappeared. So this will be entertaining. I hardly ever take notes. I took notes this time. A lot of good it's going to do me. I can't use them, but I'll get it. This will be restored, and I will live without them because I pretty much know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Now, I mentioned the phone app. This might be a little bit unsettling for some of you. And if it is, it's no big deal. You don't have to adopt these changes. But there's a new layout for the phone app. Now, this is, after all, a phone, the iPhone being a phone and all that. So I guess we should think in those terms and talk about it a little bit. When you first open the phone app, you're asked if you want to adopt this new layout or stick with the classic layout. If you stick with the classic layout, nothing changes. The new layout, things do change a lot, but you can get back to the classic layout very easily if you decide you want to. Now, the advantage of the new layout, there's only 4 tabs at the bottom of the screen, and you're going to find voicemail isn't one of them. So if you care about voicemail, and not everybody does nowadays, you're going to find that it's not there anymore. Well, it is, but it's just not there. In the calls tab is where you're going to find a kind of an amalgam of your favorites, recents, and voicemail. And some other things have been added to the phone app, to phone features in iOS that are really going to prove rather nice. For example, you're going to be able to have hold assist. So if you're stuck in one of these situations where you're on hold for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you can actually activate hold assist, have the phone call you when somebody gets back, when somebody actually answers your call. They will have been told that you'll be there in a minute, you'll get a call, and then you can join the call. So that's going to be kind of nice. You can filter out spam calls, and you can have a separate listing of people who are not in your contact list. And those people can be asked, if somebody calls you from an unknown number, they can be asked to say who they are. And if they don't do that, you won't have to worry about it. You won't even get the call. If they do give you an indication of who they are and what they're calling about, you will then see that when the call comes in. You'll have that as part of the notification. So these are kind of handy modernizing features of the phone app. But back to the new layout of the app itself. When you're in here and you have calls, it's kind of nice because once you sort of adjust psychologically to the change, I mean, the phone app hasn't changed since iPhone 3.5 or whatever, that first one we had access to back in 2009. it's nice because you can, if you have voicemails, they're right there. When you tap on a voicemail, the transcript will play for you. You can, if you use this, one little change you'll notice is, let's say you're going through your recents. Now, ever before, and I've done this, I do this a lot. I have recents and I want to call somebody back who called me. So I simply double tap in recents. That does not work anymore in the new app, because if you double tap, it simply focuses on the call, but there are actions. So if you do want to call somebody back from this new unified phone app, you simply swipe down once, which will take you into actions, and then you can you can simply double tap there to place a call. So the new phone app, as I say, it's a little bit of a shock, but if you're up for it, I think you're going to find the change worthwhile. And if you don't want to bother with it, stay with the old one, because the old one's just fine. And if you, by the way, switch to the new one and you decide you want to go back to the old one, it's easy. Double tap the filter button. The first choice you're going to see is classic. Double tap, one finger double tap that, and you're back in familiar old territory. So you can go back and forth at will among these new versions of the phone app. So I now have notes restored. That's a good thing for everybody, at least for me. And we're going to then, yes, here we are. So another little interesting thing you may or may not ever use, but it's an ability we never had before. You can reset voiceover settings. Let's say you just want to start from scratch. You want to go back to rebuild things. You've messed them up, or you're not sure how things got to be the way they are. There's a setting as a button at the bottom of the voiceover settings screen to reset voiceover settings. And once you confirm that, your voiceover settings will go back to the defaults, which in itself may be a bit of a shock depending on what you've done, how much change you've made, but it'll give you a chance to rebuild your voiceover settings if that's something you feel like you want to do. Now I'm going to talk, I'm talking voiceover all the way through here because I'm going to talk for a second to people with low vision. One of the new highly touted features of iOS 26 is liquid glass. I can hardly tell you what it is because it doesn't concern me. And I think it's not going to generally concern those of us who are voiceover users. And the AppleVis team really wasn't able to determine, they don't think they had the staff to do it, didn't really determine what harm or benefit it brings to people with low vision. If, however, it does annoy you, there's a solution. You want to turn off transparency, and that happens in accessibility. You go into settings, into accessibility, go into display, go into text size, and you can turn off transparency, which will probably address any problems that this wonderful new highly touted liquid glass feature brings to you. Something that has been added that isn't directly designed for the blind, but it's a setting in accessibility settings. It's the accessibility reader. Now, if you've played and used Safari and used the reading mode to read any messages in there, any of your web pages, you know that it's rather nice because the reading mode, number one, when you're talking about Safari, it strips out all kinds of unwanted junk, and the web pages are read in nice, pleasant voices that you have the ability to customize. Well, we have that feature now in the accessibility reader. I would say that for you, for those of us who are here, it is not a necessity, but you may know people who have low vision, have some visual impairment, some various impairments that makes it desirable for them to listen to web pages, read out what's on the screen without them wanting to use a real screen reader. Accessibility Reader is going to meet that need for them. Now, something that I'm still a little annoyed about this, but they've made a little bit of an improvement. It's always irritated me that there isn't some kind of a setting that when I create an alarm in the iPhone, there isn't a way I can say, no, I don't ever want to see the snooze choice, or I'd like to have all my snoozes be 15 minutes long, or I'd like to have all my snoozes be 5 minutes long. They still haven't implemented that. So, and I don't know how many of you still use the clock app like in the old days to set alarms. I never do. I always tell Siri to set an alarm for 4:15 p.m. and then I tell it to turn on the alarm. But if you use the clock app to set your alarms, and you might use the clock app, you could well use the clock app to manage your alarms. Then in there, you have a choice not to disable snooze forever, which I wish you did, but to change the snooze length of that particular alarm so you can have that alarm snoozing after somewhere between 3 and 15 minutes. Yeah, that's a choice that we now have that we never had before. Safari, a little change in Safari. Those of you who use that web browser, we've seen changes um, come up in the last couple of years in iOS in Safari, where they changed it. All the tabs used to be on top. Now all the tabs were on the bottom. All the controls to open up different web pages and go back to your previously open pages and take all the different actions you can take. Now we have a compressed view, which you may find really useful. They've again tried to conserve screen real estate. So basically, you have choices, and if you go into Safari settings on the web, you will find, because you know how you go into settings, and then you go into the app settings, and then you go into the settings for Safari. You can choose which of these three layouts you want, and that's something that you might be interested in if you're somebody who uses that browser a lot to read material. Something that is this is a voiceover feature, which is that we have something in voiceover that the rest of the users don't have. People, and again, we've never been able to do this, to copy multiple items and store them and then paste them into different windows. So, let's say I'm working, I have a lot of content I'm trying to copy and then paste into different apps, into a report I'm writing, into a document I'm writing. I had to copy one thing at a time and then go and paste it one at a time. That's fine if that's all you want to do, but if you have a desire to do more than that, then it really isn't very effective. So now we have something called spoken screen copied, and they are copied spoken screen. So what you do, let's say you go into some place on the web or some app and you decide to copy something, you use the three-finger quadruple tap to copy. That's how that's the copy keystroke copy of gesture that opens up the following feature. And this is a rotor feature. So let's say you have copied 5 or 6 or up to 10 different items, and you're going to want to put into another place, into a report, whatever. So then go into the text field where you want to paste these things and open up. So you're in that text field, go to the rotor, and when you find copied spoken text, you have a choice of all the different the different snippets that you have copied. You can arrow to those using using up and down, using the rotor up and down your index finger to go through them, or .4 chord, A chord if you're using a braille display, or the arrows if you're using a external keyboard. And then if you're doing it by touch on the phone, just double tap the one you want and it'll be inserted into your document. So that's for people who use the iPhone with a lot of functionality. That's a real improvement in what you can do. And I'm not too pleased with the performance of my highly expensive Braille Sense 6 at the moment because my notes have gone away again. Well, we're going to do what we can do, and if I miss something, it'll come up in questions. We're about ready, actually, to get into the discussion of the many, and I do mean many, Braille features that have been added. Sorry about this, just a second. I'm running into a little challenge. All right. It's really impressive, just philosophically for a minute, it's really impressive to see that the folks at Apple, they're not perfect. Everything they do with regard to accessibility is not perfect, but the fact that they keep innovating and keep adding Braille functionality for those of us who use Braille, or for anybody who might want to, and in this case, some of the stuff that they've done is of benefit to people who may not know how to read Braille, but maybe you know how to write it, because Braille screen input has gotten some facelifts and some upgrades, and there's some cool ways to use Braille screen input that we never had access to before. So we'll start out with that because nowadays you can go in to Braille screen input. You have many choices for how you input text. You can input text with one hand, either the right or left hand, or you can use what they call slate and stylus mode. Now this is sort of a surprise, but the thing is, these are ways to input text faster. Most of us probably find it pretty slow and laborious to write text on the iOS screen in just writing by character. If you're doing it on a Braille display or if you're writing on an external keyboard, it's much better. But all of this Braille screen input is one of the best ways to input text if you're not going to dictate. If you're going to write, it's one of the best ways to do it. If you know Braille or can learn Braille writing, it's one of the best ways to do it. And now we have these new methods for inputting text, which allow you to build characters and build words one dot at a time, and to have really total control over what you're doing. So it's pretty cool how this works. Let's see how long these notes last. I've got them back again here. Also in Braille, there's a new feature for people that are really into reading Braille and using Braille on your system called Item Overview. When you turn that on, it's kind of neat because whatever screen you're on, you have, and you can choose how many characters you want this to be. But you have a choice of from 2 to 7 character little snippets of the name of the icons on your screen. So you can, by touch, zip through that list, use a cursor routing key to tap one and activate it, take action on it. So it's a unique thing that they've made possible, and it abbreviates all the items on a screen. And you launch that, by the way, on a Braille display with dots 6, 7, and 8. Now, going away again for just a minute from Braille, now that I have notes again, it's something new that I think a lot of us are going to like, because when you're navigating, when you're writing on the on-screen keyboard, it's always been a little bit disconcerting for those of us who didn't start out with a Mac, because let's say you're writing along and you're writing the word, bigger, and then you decide you want to edit that word, make it biggest or something. And you're using the rotor, so you single finger flip up by character, or you single finger flip down. Let's assume you're moving through the word from left to right. So you come to a G. And then if you single finger flip up, you again hear a G. That's because the way the cursor is structured on the Mac and physically on the iPhone, the cursor is kind of located between those two characters. So it's a little disconcerting because it's not how it's done in Windows. Those of us who started out with our Windows PC, that's not how it works. And some people find this easy to learn and some people don't. So the good news is now in VoiceOver settings, we have a choice. We can set our cursor to operate the way it operates in Windows. So when you single finger flick down, you're going to get a G because that's the character to the right of the cursor. And when you single finger flick up, you will see, for example, the I, which is in this case the character to the left of the cursor. And there's a Braille trick for solving this too, using underline cursor so that you don't have the confusion of where is the cursor, where is my input going to go when I go to write something. Now, this is something that may concern a few people. You've always been able to use, or for the last long time, you could use what they call single finger quick nav, giving you access to the same kind of quick access keys that you have access to on the web in Windows if you're using a Windows screen reader. H for heading, they're pretty much universal. There are variants among the different screen readers. There are variants in VoiceOver, but pretty much universal. That was possible using a keyboard, an external physical keyboard, QWERTY keyboard, but it wasn't possible when using a Braille keyboard. Now it is. I won't go into any more details about that, but it's pretty good. Now that I have my notes, let me see if I care about. Oh, okay. Braille screen input. Another fix that they gave to that. If you tried to use it and you've been frustrated before, some of us are better than others. Some people are outright whizzes with this thing. I am not. I spent some time learning it last year and working on it, and decided that in my own use case, I tend to dictate so much more of my messages that I probably wasn't going to use it very much, even though it's a really good thing. Well, now they've improved it besides the aspects I talked about, they've made it where it calibrates easier, because when you're writing, your fingers are going to be on certain places on the screen, and you're going to use those Braille dot patterns on the screen, and used to have to calibrate all the time to put the phone in conjunction to where your fingers are. Nowadays, there is a procedure, there is a setting that allows the phone to try to keep up with your fingers so you don't have to calibrate as often as you did before. So we're coming down to the wire on this. What I'm not going to talk about, because it actually needs its own session, and I actually haven't learned it very well yet. But again, I'm amazed that Apple has implemented this feature. It's actually a Braille mode that has been implemented. You can actually operate your iPhone with a Braille display totally in Braille. You can now use BRF files, which we never could do before. You can it's an amazing thing for people who want to really use their phones with Braille. It's called Braille Access. It's needs its own session of instructions, but it's a completely new and highly regarded feature that has been put into the iPhone in iOS 26. So if, for example, you'd be able to take an e-reader from NLS or a Braille display, a Focus. That's some of the, there are note takers out there. They still work as note takers. But if you don't have one, if you have a Braille device that's not a note taker, has no or little note taking capabilities, you can now use your iPhone as a note taker and take your notes, read your BRF files, store BRF files, search them, and also operate the phone from the desktop, from the thoroughly operate your phone as a Braille device thanks to this Braille access mode. So I think I have covered what I intended to cover. And we'll see what kind of questions there are and reactions and comments that people have, and we can all sort of elucidate each other and learn from each other on what your experiences have been with this new upgrade. But I've been happy with it. It has not gotten in my way. I didn't have the problems that a few people had starting it out. And I think the more I use it, the more I'm going to like it. So at this point, if there are any questions or comments, we can take those.
Thanks, Dean. Matt has his hand raised. Go ahead, Matt.
Yes. When you update it, does it affect your voiceover voice?
It's not supposed to, but some people have said that it does. I've seen these comments that this happens sometimes. Some people had trouble, they lost eloquence, or their voice went back to Samantha. So again, you might want to, if you have concerns about that, you might want to wait till 26.1, and I suspect some of those instabilities will be eliminated. But mostly, I mean, didn't happen to me, didn't happen to most people, but it does happen to some people.
Thank you so much and have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, Matt. And Alicia, you have your hand raised.
I've had trouble with the Braille display, the Focus 14, not typing in my messages.
Mm-hmm.
And will it now be able to, one, not disconnect itself, and two, type and show up on the
Right. So that in other words, you're trying to say send a text message and you're trying to write it in Braille, and you're wishing that it would show up on the Braille display as well as show up on the iOS screen, right?
Yeah, it shows up on the Braille display, but it doesn't show up on the phone.
Oh, that's really useful. Well, I can't tell you if so. The first thing, assuming you can and assuming they'll listen, and sometimes they do, usually they do, that would have been something to report to Apple Accessibility, because it's not a problem it's not a problem everybody's having, but so I can't tell you if you'll still have it in iOS 26. I think there's a good chance you won't. But all I can say on something like that is keep being a squeaky wheel with it, because that shouldn't be happening, and it may not be happening anymore, but I don't know if it's going to.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you can tell them. Yeah.
Thank you for everything that you've shared with us. This is JR. Thank you. Good night.
Mhm.
Bye, Vicky.
Bye,
Thank you.
JR. Okay, Jay has his hand raised. Jay?
Okay.
Hello?
Yep, we got you.
Yes, my name is Jay, and I have
Uh-huh.
a question regarding this iOS 2026. It is 2026, right? It is not 26.
Yes.
Okay, so
Actually, it's 26, iOS 26.
oh, so
They don't use the 4 digits. JAWS uses the 4
Okay.
digits. They
Right,
don't.
right. Okay, so that will be moved from 18 to 26. It's okay.
That's right. Yeah.
I have iPhone 14 Pro. So my question is, that phone can handle this new iOS smoothly or no?
Yes, you won't get, and I didn't even talk about it, you won't get Apple Intelligence, which is when they're being very slow about implementing artificial intelligence with the iPhone, and that phone won't get it. No, so far you haven't missed anything. So yes, but however, I mean, I just upgraded my wife's 13 to it, and it's just fine. It actually, that's something I do give Apple credit for. They've gone back, I think, even into I think 11. You can 11 gets the new update, as
Okay,
well as
so
the SE3. So you'll have no problem.
okay, thank you so much. Have a nice day. Hello, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Jay. Anybody else have any other questions for Dean? And Dean, you were right. It is the 11. It can hold the newest iOS update.
Right. Yeah, it goes,
Yeah.
and also the SE3 gets it, which is, so those are the phones that's the bottom end of the phones that you can upgrade. But if you want to get Apple Intelligence for what that ends up being worth, you have to have a 15 Pro or higher.
Yeah, okay.
We have
And
Sarah.
Paul has his hand up. Paul,
Yeah, I was on mute my audio. 1 second, please. I was going to tell you with the 4-finger triple tap, this is a comment. There's a new accessibility setting for that as well, where if you do the 4-finger triple tap, you can actually scan a whole page now, where you can actually scan a letter in, or actually read the whole document to you with the 4-finger triple tap.
What's so like what you're using? How are you scanning with what app are you talking about?
Well, the 4-finger triple tap built into Apple VoiceOver, the 4-finger triple tap lets you look at things in a room or look at a street sign or something.
Oh, okay. Some of those LiDAR features. Yeah, okay.
Well, it's not only just LiDAR features, it'll scan other things as well. But with the new Apple operating system this year, you can actually scan a whole page in there and have it read to you, like something like CNAI, but it's built in, just do a 4-finger triple tap, it's built right into the operating system.
Well, nobody has commented on that I've seen. That's pretty interesting because
I just say people can try it out. It's pretty simple to do. You just have to do it once and turn on and line up with the page and fumble around a little bit. You'll find the option to scan the whole page.
yeah, it's really amazing the options we have for reading print nowadays. The phone has really opened that up for us compared to what we would have had in 20 years ago for had to buy a expensive OCR program on your computer if you could and deal flash. Yeah, well, of course I still believe nothing replaces Kurzweil for certain reading tasks, but it has to be I have to really want to use that because the phone is so handy. I mean.
That's why I thought this was handy to know. That's why I was throwing out there for people. If you want to try it, 4-finger triple tap opens up a lot of things, and it's pretty easy to use.
Yeah, well, I'm going to look into that. I had not heard about that, so thank you.
thanks, Paul. Debbie, you have your hand raised.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My question is, where can we find documentation on a lot of these features like the Braille screen input and all the things you can do with that? And I was wondering where there's documentation on that and also on the Braille access.
So that's, I mean, documentation. Okay, for one thing, there is the iOS 26 manual. So that's as far as that goes, and that's a very accurate document. You can get to that on the web. You can go into Apple Books and you can acquire it and read it there. So in terms of a manual, that's the official source. Now, but it's not necessarily that easy to learn from that. At least in my opinion, it's really good and you want it. But for example, with Braille Access, I read that section of Braille Access, but I'm not sure as a result of that, I know how to use it or what to do with it. So it's beneficial at that point to have people who provide instruction. So specifically regarding Braille access, there's an organization that's worth knowing about called the Braillists. It's braillists.org. They come out of the UK. They have a podcast that you can subscribe to however you want to subscribe to it, or they have live programs that is what the podcast is made out of eventually. So next Tuesday at 2:30 in the afternoon Eastern time, they're going to have a master class on Braille access. And then that will be part of their podcast in a few weeks after that. That's the best source I've seen. AppleVis said they were going to, I've heard it mentioned that they're going to do a podcast on this or a tutorial on it, but I haven't seen one. I would have liked to have seen one. I haven't seen one yet. Those are the best sources I know of offhand for that particular thing. And those two sources. Apple Viz, it's really good to keep up on Apple Viz, their podcast. If you can use podcasts, or just pay attention to their website or do searches on there, because they have lots of tutorials and podcasts as well as blog posts that give explanations of things. Another source of some value, not so much for Braille, in my opinion, is TTJ Tech out of out of Pennsylvania. They have a free course called VoiceOver In and Out that anybody can sign up for, and they're a Christian organization, but really so that's kind of part of their ministry, but they don't minister to you as part of this. It's kind of a living ministry that they do. But I'm explaining how they do all these free things, and they have it'll be like a 24 lesson course on voiceover. And then later than that, then they'll have other courses on Apple TV and the Apple Watch, and they'll have another course on the iPad. And they do this every year. All those courses you can take and join and be there live, or you can get the course information from their podcast. They're not that strong in Braille, as far as I'm concerned. They do other things really well, and Braille isn't one of them. So that's the best summary I can give you in terms of documentation sources. Are we still connected?
We are.
Yes, we have another.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Kristen?
I don't like dead air. Dead air is not my
Thank
friend.
you.
Thank you.
And Kristen had her hand raised.
Kristen, go ahead.
Hi, I just noticed a couple of other things that I wanted to add that are new. Under VoiceOver, there's a button that says what's new in VoiceOver that was kind of a helpful starting point for new features.
That's a good point, because it really is there, and it does give you an updated information.
And the second thing would be on a Braille display, if you press dots 7 and 8, you get kind of a menu of some of the new Braille features. That's all.
Yeah, that's good. And they've expanded the number of commands. I didn't go into some of that. You have more choices there's more Braille commands and keystrokes that you can apply to make more Braille commands. So you have greater flexibility for your use of your Braille display. For that, the best thing is to go in and you can customize the Braille, the commands for your own personal Braille display, and all of that is available, and there's more of it than there used to be.
Great, thank you. Lori, you have your hand raised.
Yes, good evening, and thank you, Dean. Just want to follow up on another person's comment about the 4-finger triple tap. That's live recognition. It's the shortcut way to get to it faster, and that your mileage can vary depending on
Right.
if you have a
I
pro
think so.
phone for the LiDAR sensor. So there's the door, the people, the scene, the text recognition, etc.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because the command that I talked about for copying text was a 3-finger quadruple tap. And what you're talking about, I haven't tended to use it and haven't learned that keystroke, that gesture for live recognition. But is it a 4-finger triple tap, right? So those are different. I was kind of puzzled about what the gentleman said. Now it makes sense. 4-finger triple tap probably does allow you to scan documents, and as you say, your mileage will vary. And I would not rule out using other scanning apps that are available on the phone. If Seeing AI, Be My Eyes, Envision, there's all kinds of free apps that allow us to scan texts. And actually, one of the best ones, what's it called? Voice Dream Scanner. If you haven't, it costs money. It's $8 or something, but I've heard people say, who have tested this perhaps more diligently than I have, that that's the best app for scanning text. It's produced by the folks by Winston, who started Voice Dream Reader. Some of you may know about that still. It's still around. and it was a revolutionary app in its time. He is now no longer part of that app. It's turned over to another team and in some ways has deteriorated, but he's kept Voice Dream Scanner. So for people that really want to use their phones to read print, I would give that serious consideration.
And one more note that there's a new preview app for PDFs. So I'm not updated to 26, but I am hoping that that will give everyone better ways already built in to deal with PDFs. I understand it's
Yeah,
available on the Mac and has been for years, but it's coming to
I
iOS.
haven't tested that, but that, yeah, anything that will give us better access to PDFs is welcome.
Thank you.
Hand raised again.
Matthew?
No, nothing to do with this meeting, but with Zoom, to raise your hand, it's under reactions. So you know.
Yes, they keep fiddling around and making the Zoom app more difficult to use.
I know, it keeps updating every couple of weeks.
There
But
is, if you're a JAWS user, I recommend, it costs money. I recommend Brian Hartgen's Zoom scripts. That he's coming out with a new version of them actually in October. And if you're a fairly heavy Zoom user, especially if you want to run meetings and such, it's worth thinking about investing in that.
But thank you again.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions for Dean? All right. Well, Dean, thank you so much for joining us tonight and giving us all an update on the update. So we really appreciate you joining. And everyone, please remember to follow the Tech Talks Facebook page and our YouTube channel. This recording and other recordings are uploaded on there. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and stays well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a great
very
night.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Have
Good
a good
night.
night, guys.
Zoom meeting, audio now unmuted. Zoom meeting, happy message left.